"You're replaceable. Don't ever forget that," my wife laughed, clinking her wine glass with her boss in front of her entire corporate team. They all chucked, looking at me like I was a charity case she had dragged to the annual company gala. My wife, Olivia, had recently been promoted to senior director, and she had spent the entire evening making passive-aggressive remarks about my quiet desk job, painting me as a lazy husband who was riding her coattails. The room full of high-flying corporate executives looked at me with pity and amusement. They believed I was the weak, dependent spouse who would swallow any humiliation just to keep living in our beautiful suburban home. But they didn't know that the private investment firm that funded her entire division, the anonymous holding company that held the deed to the very building we were standing in, belonged to me. I stood there, smiled, took a sip of my water, and made a single phone call. 2 weeks later, she found out exactly how replaceable she was. To understand how my marriage turned into a corporate Cold War, you have to know how we started. When Olivia and I married 7 years ago, we had nothing. I was working 80-hour weeks trying to launch a tech-focused venture capital fund, while she worked as an entry-level marketing assistant. I worked in the shadows, quietly building my portfolio under an anonymous LLC to avoid the constant pitches from greedy relatives and fake friends. As my fund grew, I kept our lifestyle modest. We lived in a nice house, but we drove average cars, and I never bragged about my wealth. I wanted us to build a real life. But as Olivia climbed the corporate ladder at her new firm, Tech Vanguard, her personality shifted. The humble, supportive woman I married was replaced by someone obsessed with status, titles, and the corporate elite. She began hanging out with her division vice president, an arrogant man named Julian. Julian was everything I wasn't, loud, flashy, and constantly bragging about his stock options. Olivia started dropping hints that I wasn't doing enough. She would look at my home office and sigh, asking why I couldn't be a go-getter like Julian. When I told her my desk job was stable and kept me happy, she sneered, "Stability is for people who lack ambition, Clara." She began staying out late for client dinners, leaving me to cook and take care of the house alone. When I confronted her about the lack of respect in our marriage, she snapped, "My career is what pays for our vacations and our future. You should be supporting me, not dragging me down." The tipping point came a month ago. I was cleaning the house when I found Olivia's tablet logged into her personal email. A notification caught my eye. It was a thread with her human resources department. The subject line read, "Spousal benefits and relocation planning." I opened it and read the messages. My wife was actively planning to relocate to the European branch of Tech Vanguard with Julian. But that wasn't the worst part. She had asked HR about the legal implications of divorcing a dependent spouse, stating, "My husband is a low earner with no real career prospects. I want to ensure my assets and my future inheritance from my parents are completely protected before I file." She was planning to abandon me, take our home, and leave me with nothing, all while continuing to sleep with her boss. I sat on our living room couch, feeling the cold weight of her betrayal. I had spent 7 years supporting her, funding her lifestyle, and quietly ensuring her career was secure behind the scenes. And she was planning to discard me like trash. I knew I couldn't react with anger. If I confronted her, she would hide her plans, hire a cutthroat attorney, and try to freeze our joint accounts. I needed to move first. Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly met with my lawyers. Since the house was bought under my anonymous trust before our marriage, she had no claim to it, but she didn't know that. I systematically moved all my personal assets, investments, and funds out of our shared accounts into private trusts. I left exactly $3,000 in the joint checking account, just enough to cover the monthly bills until my move. Meanwhile, I contacted the board of Tech Vanguard. My venture fund owned a 62% controlling stake in the company. I was their largest shareholder, though my name was kept off the public website. I told the CEO that I wanted a full audit of Julian's division, specifically looking into his corporate expense accounts and hiring practices. Then came the annual gala. Olivia insisted I attend, telling me it was a formal event and that I needed to wear a suit that didn't look cheap. She wanted me there as a prop, a foil to show her colleagues how much she was dating down to build character. Throughout the night, Julian and Olivia were inseparable. During a group toast, Julian raised his glass and said to Olivia, the rising star who is carrying her household on her back. Olivia laughed, looked at me in front of the entire group and said, "Well, someone has to pay the mortgage. You're replaceable. Don't ever forget that." The group laughed. I looked at Olivia's smug face, then at Julian's arrogant smile. I didn't get angry. I simply looked at my watch, raised my glass, and said, "To success." I excused myself to the restroom, pulled out my phone, and called the Tech Vanguard CEO. I told him, "Fire Julian tonight and initiate the relocation audit on Olivia's division immediately." When I walked back into the hall, the atmosphere had changed. Julian was staring at his phone, his face completely pale. His secretary had just sent him an emergency email stating his corporate credit cards were frozen and he was being suspended, pending a forensic audit for embezzling travel funds. Olivia was frantically trying to call HR, but no one was answering. I walked past them, got into my car, and drove home. When I reached the house, I packed my final bags, loaded them into my car, and left. I deactivated my phone and checked into a luxury hotel downtown. The next morning, the storm broke. Olivia arrived at the house to find it completely empty, with only a folder on the kitchen counter. Inside the folder were the relocation emails she had sent to HR, the screenshots of her messages with Julian, and the eviction notice for the house, which belonged to my trust. She also found the divorce papers, stating that she would receive exactly half of the $3,000 left in our joint account. My phone, which I had turned back on with a new number, was flooded with messages from her. She went from furious to desperate in a matter of hours. She left voicemails crying, begging me to explain how I could do this, telling me she loved me and that Julian was just a mistake. She didn't know how I had found out, and she didn't know how she was going to pay for a lawyer now that Julian was fired and her own job was under investigation. 2 days later, my lawyer met with her and her attorney. Olivia sat across the table, looking exhausted and broken. Her lawyer tried to demand half of my assets in alimony, claiming she was the primary earner. My lawyer slowly smiled, opened his briefcase, and placed the corporate tax returns of my venture fund on the table, along with the documents showing my 62% ownership of Tech Vanguard. I looked at Olivia's face as the reality set in. The husband she had mocked as a quiet desk job loser was the billionaire owner of the company that had just suspended her. She looked at me, her jaw trembling, and whispered, "Clara, please. You can't do this to me. We are a family." I leaned forward, looked her dead in the eye, and said, "You told me I was replaceable, Olivia. I was just taking your advice." The divorce was settled in less than a month. Because of the prenuptial agreement she had insisted on signing years ago to protect her minor marketing salary, she was entitled to none of my wealth. Julian was officially prosecuted for corporate fraud, and Olivia was terminated from Tech Vanguard for complicity in his expense abuse. She was forced to move back into her parents' small apartment, her career in ruins, while I expanded my fund and bought a new home overlooking the city. I stood up for myself and refused to let a toxic partner discard me for status. If you believe I handled this betrayal the right way, or if you think I should have confronted her sooner, let me know in the comments below. And if you want to support the channel and hear more real stories of survival and justice, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. It helps us grow and keeps these voices alive. Tell me, what would you have done?